Supreet, thank you for joining in.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Supreet, you have done beautiful work in Google legal team from last 13, 14 years and now heading the global commercial team for the go-to-market in Google. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility, lot of work. Tell me how you grew. How does a good lawyer become a great general counsel?
I think one of the most important skills to have to become transfer from being a good lawyer and good individual contributor into a great leader and general counsel is the ability to look around the corner for your clients and anticipate their needs. One of the big differences when you go from outside counsel to in-house is when you're outside counsel, you're meant to be an expert on the law. But when you're in-house, you need to have table stakes in understanding the law, but you have to become an expert in your business. You can eliminate all risk, but then the company actually probably will not thrive because in order to eliminate all risk, you can't be as innovative as companies need to be. So you need to understand the risk tolerance of your business, what's going on in the industry, what's going on from a regulatory standpoint that will impact the industry that your company is going into, and be that great connector and bring it all together to give very calibrated, risk based, practical advice for your clients to allow them to really excel.
When you say client, so let's say in a general counsel, the clients are the internal clients or the external clients?
Internal clients. So, of course, your ultimate client is the company you work for itself, but you will have major stakeholders internally that you support on a regular basis. And in-house counsel, that's who we refer to as our clients, is the internal business groups stakeholders.
When we talk about the risk tolerance, Supreet, how are you mitigating risks for Google? If you can go a little bit in detail for our audience.
Yes, so that's where you really marry what the theoretical risk is to the practical application. So, if it's working with contracts, which is more of my day to day, there are certain terms that we consider risk terms. For example, limitations of liability, indemnification. So, areas where it's not guaranteed that something is going to go wrong, but if it does, that's where these terms are going to come into play. And so you take what you know from a contracting perspective, what type of damages would the other party have to prove, what they could be eligible for, and then you apply it to your practical business. What is the real likelihood that there's going to be a problem? If there was a problem, what would the remedies be? Would we have to shut down our entire business? Then you want to take a more conservative approach. If you can address it in different ways, like it would be, there's things you can do to mitigate the issue. Perhaps it's more security reviews or having more solid processes in place. Then you can accept more risk exposure in contracts because you know from a practical perspective that you limited the likelihood that one, the event will happen, and two, that if it did happen, it would have big, large damages associated with it.
hmm hmm And so Google is at the forefront of technology and working in company like Google. How should a younger lawyer, let's say graduating in 2025, 2026, 2027, should choose a career path? Should they go to a large company like Google? Should they go to a smaller company where they can get some ESOPs and go to the general counsel role faster? Or should they start their career in a law firm and try to become a partner? How should somebody choose their career path?
So I think it really depends on what they want their future to be. So I always tell people don't just look for at the immediate job. Think about what you want the job after that to be and do an inventory of yourself. What skill sets would be needed for that plus one job? And which of those skills do you already have? And which of those skills do you need to build up a practice in? Then that will help you determine what type of job you take next. So I do believe that going to a firm right out of law school provides you with great training, especially if you want to be a transactional attorney or a litigation attorney. Law firms are set up to train you well. You get a lot of repetition, and that's what allows you to see what's in practice. That's what allows you to take the theory into the practical. Now, perhaps if you want to be a prosecutor, maybe you want to try to clerk for a judge first before you go to a law firm or try to work for a government agency. The interesting thing, though, especially at going to a big firm right outside of law school, is that with the increased use of I believe that law firms are going to rethink how they do training, because right now they are able to bill out while training their associates. So associates who are doing diligence for M&A transactions or discovery for litigation, they get trained while doing work that the law firms can recoup. As we're seeing AI become more prevalent in the legal space, a lot of that entry level work could be done more easily by AI. So the law firms are going to have to think about how they do their training. So I also recommend to law students or people early in their legal career to start working with all of the AI tools. And, of course, I'll put in a plug for Gemini being a Google lawyer, but start prompting, start working with it, see how you can enhance your prompt. Throw in, large regulations, see how well the summaries are coming out, because that is, I believe, what will help them when they go to companies or when they go to law firms to really pave the way to innovate in the legal space with the use of AI to handle some of the more at scale, low, entry level, skill level required work. Um,
Hmm.
in terms of, once you've gotten your first job, for me going in house, the thing that drove me there was I loved to be part of a team. I loved to see how my work impacted the actual product launch or the actual relationship with a partner. I loved the business strategy. My background is in industrial engineering and operations research. So doing tech trends was a perfect marriage of all of that together. I wasn't getting that at a law firm because they pay you by the 6-minute interval. So they didn't want to chit chat and, let me know how the launches were necessarily going. So for me, that's why in-house was great. For others, working with the government is great because they get to shape policy. For some, working at a law firm is really what they want to do. They want to be a partner. They want to build the business. They want to work on issues that are very nascent in the law. So there's not one size fits all for everyone. You really need to look internally and see what interests you.
Hmm. Hmm. And since we have spoken about AI a lot already, let's go in deep dive of AI. Google is the forefront of AI, building beautiful models on a video side, Gemini, and also Notebook LLM. Tell us what's next in AI by Google, and how is the legal team adopting AI and using AI?
Yes, so we are going through a lot of different use cases internally. So some areas where we are using our internal tools like Notebook LM is on regulation summary. The podcast feature of Notebook LM is really interesting. Actually, I put in, I think it was the EU Data Act into it. It gave me a summary, but then in the podcast, it could recognize that perhaps this wasn't the most scintillating topic. And so in the podcast itself, it said, well, we know that this is a rather dry topic. Let's see how we can spice it up. So, being able to listen to the summaries too was quite helpful. We are also oftentimes in Google Cloud, we receive terms from customers around security terms that they would like to see. Our security terms are based on our reality of how our data center is set up. So we have an internally created tool that will compare the requirements that our customers are asking us for and compare that to our standard agreements to show every single section where the customer's request is already covered, or where it's not covered, some of the rationale as to why we might not be able to agree to it, but some alternate terms. So that really saves a lot of times for our lawyers. They go into their negotiations better prepared for ways to really collaborate with the customer to get to a mutually agreeable uh, position. And then from an administrative function, part of my job and part of the job of senior legal leaders is to manage a budget. So I use AI all the time in Google Sheets to help me create formulas, to manage my budget well and to forecast. And then again, with every leader, performance management is quite a large task. So using our AI tools to summarize key responsibilities that our employees have, some of their key accomplishments, and help us draft our people assessments has been super helpful. And then in addition, I think taking a look at, there's tools that we put together that takes a look at terms of some of our similarly situated competitors or other cloud providers so that we can benchmark, how our standard terms do against their publicly published standard terms.
Hmm. Hmm. You also mentioned about the law firm has need to retrain, rethink how they train the younger lawyers. If you can throw some more light on that, how should they go about it?
Yeah, that'll be I could give a little description of how they're doing it now and then some of the challenges I think they're going to have to face. So oftentimes junior attorneys, they are the ones that if they're working on an M&A transaction or financing transaction or a litigation motion, they will uh, literally go through reams and reams of documents to look for certain terms. If you're doing an M&A transaction, has the target agreed to exclusivity? Have they agreed to provide source code, things that will really impact the acquirer's ability to continue the business? So, I know it's a little different, but in my day, we would go line by line to see where were their deviations. But in reading through those thousands of agreements, I just inherently learned, oh, this is actually how you draft a termination section. This is how you draft a limitation of liability. There's places to be creative in transactional work, but on stock terms like that, on governing law, limitation of liability, you don't want to be that creative. The more standard, the better. It helps you with future litigation. And in discovery, you are going through, again, reams and reams of emails, documents, evidence to look for certain key phrases. But now a lot of the AI tools can at least do the first pass for you. So the younger associates, while they'll still need to check the work and add their own assessments to it, they won't be looking through the volume of documents that they had before. And the reason that's important, it was really time consuming. And so even though junior associates are built out at a lower rate, law firms were able to make some money off of that because they were able to charge for hours and hours of work. So now, and I think that they perhaps will have to rethink fee structures because as clients want their law firms to use AI, they're doing it because they want the amount of time the outside counsel spends on their matter to reduce, which will mean that their fees will reduce because most of the time it's on an hourly consumption basis. So I think they're going to have to rethink and maybe come up with flat fee options or project-based options. How you translate that into charging for the time that your junior associates spend, which will be a little less efficient, or some of it could be replaced by AI. I think they're just going to have to spend concentrated time on training that they might not be able to bill for. So they'll have to make up for that lost revenue stream in other ways through more creative packages.
Hmm. Do you think younger associates, younger lawyers will have difficulty finding jobs in the advent of AI?
It will be different, I think, because even if some of the entry level work could be done by AI, you're always going to eventually need mid level associates. And how do you get them there? You're not just going to be able to pluck people who haven't worked for a couple of years and then bring them over. So I think they will have to develop slightly different skills and they may have to do some more on their own to train. I think that it might be a bit more difficult to find some of the traditional jobs like going to a big law firm, but I think that, there will be other avenues. Perhaps they'll go to smaller law firms, perhaps they'll go to the government earlier. Um, maybe big corporations right now, a lot of big corporations don't take very junior attorneys because they don't have the time or resources to train them. But if AI is doing some of that training, maybe we'll see some of the big companies bring in, first, second year associates as opposed to waiting until they've been working for 3 or 4 years. So they'll have to
Mhm.
be creative, and I think that's where the power of connection will be really important for junior associates, making sure that while they're in law school, they are making connections with practicing attorneys so that they have a better chance to get a foot in the door when they're ready to look for a job.
You mean while they're in internship or something?
Yeah, so when I was in law school, I worked or I spent time with other bar associations, like affinity-based group like the Asian Bar Association, the South Asian Bar Association, Women in Licensing, and they are very welcoming to law students to come to some of their mixers. They also often have mentorship programs, so I think it's going to be even more important for law students to get engaged in those different affinity groups while they're in school so that it opens up internship opportunities for them, but also permanent jobs.
Hmm. That's one common advice being given by a lot of general counsel as spoken to. Don't just focus on your being a good lawyer, focus on building great relationships, authentic relationships where you want to learn from your seniors and mentors and build those great relationships will help you grow your career fast. And you have perfectly validated that as well. Let's talk about a bit about the fee structure of the law firms you mentioned. You mentioned that law firms have to redo or rethink about the fee structure because I'm seeing a lot of law firms are charging $2,500 an hour or $3,000 an hour in the world of AI. I mean, it sometimes tells me, well, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? I mean, are they not thinking? So, how do law firms, according to you, need to redo their fee structure? What can they do about it?
Yeah, I think they'll have to take more of a value based approach rather than a time based approach. And
Mm,
because uh, in order for law firms to become more efficient, I think they'll have to use AI more. In order for their clients to be okay with them using AI, they will want a trade off. So that means that they will want their overall fees to go down because AI should be making the outside counsel more efficient. So less hours will be spent. For a model that is, on a large part, based on charging per hour, you don't have as much incentive to spend less time. So that's why I think going to a value-based approach is going to be more palatable to clients, especially as we move further along in the AI journey in the legal space. So again, that's why I think going to project project based, like a flat fee. Of course, it's hard at the beginning of a project to know how much time will really be spent. So I think law firms are going to have to do some work analyzing how much time had been spent on different types of projects and kind of building out what they think their fee structure will look like and have certain parameters in place, whether that's, how many regulations they'll have to take a look at, how many documents will be part of the review process. But it's been a long time since law firms have really radically changed their fee structure, and I think they're going to have to do that now.
hmm How concerned is Google about the outside counsel fee structure and the number of hours they have been spending? Is Google massively concerned about it as well?
Yes, for the legal department, that is our largest spend is on outside counsel. You can imagine for a company as large as ours that just the litigation costs alone for outside counsel is quite extensive. And in the day and age where all companies around the world are focusing more and more on profitability and lowering internal operational costs, with outside counsel spend being one of the biggest budget hits for legal, that's an area that we spend a lot of time focusing on, especially the senior leaders. So, how do we get proper rates? How do we train our own people to work well with outside counsel so they're getting the best bang for the buck? And how what different fee structures can we go to? What different types of now there's different types of legal providers out there. Some will provide secondii services. Some will provide a pool of attorneys that are dedicated to you. Some are more of the traditional partner-led outside counsel. So there's a lot of scrutiny at most big companies now on the spending with outside counsel.
hmm And do you see with so much of AI being given to the GCs and the legal team, they will be more self-reliant and they will be less reliant on the outside counsel? Is that going to happen in the future as well?
I think so. It won't completely replace the need for outside counsel, but some of that initial work, a new regulation comes out that's massive. Before, perhaps we would go to outside counsel to ask for an initial assessment and then we dive in deeper. Now I think the initial assessment can be done very well with existing AI tools to give summaries. And then also now that AI is also getting, you can tweak the results to focus on certain areas. You can even ask questions of, like how will this impact cloud services as opposed to non-cloud services. So that initial assessment work I think can be done internally and then you go to outside counsel for more nuanced guidance. But that initial work I think can very easily be done internally.
Mm, absolutely. So the amount of work will reduce, and these large law firms in the future might not be very large, might not remain very large. They become sharper and slimmer and leaner using more AI. So that means there will be some portion of these people who will not be required because they'll become slimmer and sharper and focused and leaner.
Yeah.
Uh, so what's going to happen to lawyers who are not being in use?
Yeah, that's where I think being adaptable is going to be really key for these new attorneys coming out. Think about think about traditional career paths, but also be ready to pivot to different areas that are, tangential to legal, but might not be part of the traditional path. And again, I always go back to connections. That's where the connections are important because the legal field is so diverse, but I find that a lot of law students think that there are just a couple of paths, but the more you talk to practicing attorneys, the more you'll see what type of interesting jobs they have. Some of the lawyers that I worked with before, especially that worked on M&A transactions, they have now moved to the corporate development side of the house, on the business side of the house. They use all of their knowledge of M&A transactions, but to be the one that's bringing in the new targets as opposed to the one that's negotiating the purchase agreements. So that ability to pivot and know what's out there is going to be super important.
hmm hmm And if you had to start your career all over again, Supreet, in 2025, with so much of AI around and new and so much of changes around, in 2025, how will Supreet start her career again?
I would get certified in different AI classes for sure. A lot of the big players have free certifications, and I always encourage junior attorneys and law students to do that so that you are familiar with the technology. I would take a prompt engineering class for sure. And then to be honest, I was so focused on being in the technology space. I would spend some more time learning about different industries and how legal works in different industries to broaden my scope.
hmm And would that be the advice to a young lawyer as well who's graduating 2025, 2026? Is that what you suggest them as well?
I would, yeah. I think it's always important to have a goal because that helps you take the classes that you want, especially when you're in your second and third year of law school. So have your ultimate goal in mind and take classes or join groups that further that, but always carve out some time for you to think about completely different industries, completely different legal types of jobs, and then even having a look at, like I said, the tangential world, like policy jobs where legal minds are super important. Some business development roles where having that legal knowledge will be really helpful. So yeah, I would encourage them to carve out, you know, 10, 20% of their time to focus on areas outside of their major goal.
hmm When you say about having ultimate goal for lawyers, most of these people don't, most of the younger lawyer do not set goals. How do you suggest they set goals for their careers?
It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, through your internship, through your first couple of jobs, really take a moment to see, are you enjoying what you're learning? Do you think that the people who are a couple steps ahead of you in the organization you're working with are doing jobs that you would find interesting? I think that is what helps you set your goals when you can see it and have a taste of it. And it's okay if the path that you thought you were on, when I first started, I thought, oh, I'm going to go to a law firm and then maybe I'll try to go in house, but maybe I would love to be a partner. It seemed very exciting. And then when I saw what the partners were doing and the amount of time they had to spend bringing in business, I knew that one wasn't something I enjoyed. Two, nor it was not where my skill sets really lied. So uh, questioning yourself and being able to move off of what you thought you should do and more in line with what you would want to do. That's I think how you can set your goals. Of course, it's really important the first couple of years experience is what really matters. Maybe this is the immigrant upbringing in me, like the time for really enjoying your career comes after you've been working for a couple of years, but you really need to get the foot in the door, get the experience, and then you can always take that experience and pivot it into other areas if you don't want to keep continuing down that avenue.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful advice, Supreet. Tell us about the sacrifices a lawyer has to make in their career.
It's time. You are on call a lot because there's some work you do that's just generally to help your clients move along, and that's somewhat predictable. But no matter what legal field you're in, you want some part of your job is always crisis management. So maybe there's some litigation that has popped up. Maybe there is a deal that needs to close in the next week because you know that there's going to be an announcement by a competitor. There are things that will come up and you will have to drop things to help your clients out. I my job is very end of year focused, and I take a separate car when we go to the movies with my kids because I know that I might have to leave in the middle of the movie. So I've adjusted my life so that in certain times I can still enjoy it, but I have a path for me to go address the work that I need to do. And, I make time to rest and recoup because every brain needs that. If you burn out, you're no help to yourself, to your family, or to your clients. But when you are not taking that break, building in that flexibility for yourself, because oftentimes when your clients need you, they need you. And then, especially in the first couple of years, when you're the lowest person on the rung, you're the one that's going to be tapped to do the last minute project that will require long hours. So your time is the thing you sacrifice the most. I would say be very intentional about how you recover and setting time for yourself, and then be transparent with your family or friends about, that you are there for them, but there are times that you might have to drop things to do what your clients need.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for being so honest, authentic about it. People feel like, if you're working in Google, you have a very beautiful life, cushy life. You don't have to work too hard. Uh, you work hard only when you're working in a law firm as a partner. You do long hours. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
We work really, really hard. I know there's a lot of articles out there about what is it, like vest and rest or something like that. I can tell you that at Google, that is not the case. In Google Cloud, that is definitely not the case. In the time that I've been at Google, we went from not being profitable to being a $50 billion run rate. That does not happen without the legal team being there late nights, early mornings to get deals signed and products out the door. I think the difference is, though, that you feel a part of the team when you're in house. And I have a close relationship with my business counterparts. So when you are putting in those long hours, you feel appreciated, and that goes a long way when you're stressed and tired. And then there's ebbs and flows. So maybe that's a different with a law firm too, is that, when a huge project is done, we try to make room for our lawyers to have a bit of a break before they go to the next one. But, end of quarter is always hard. All of December, there are no breaks. So I would say it is not an easy job, but it is a very rewarding job.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell us about what is success for Supreet.
Oh, that's changed. That's changed over the years for sure. Where I am now, success for me is enabling the business and my team members to really surpass their own expectations and thrive. I I've had some great business partners along the way that have brought me into the business side of the house so that I can see the impact of the legal work on the business goals, but also has allowed me to change the way I practice the law to enhance the likelihood that we'll have positive business results. And then I've been so fortunate to have great mentors myself through my 20 plus year career who I'm still in touch with to this day, and I know the impact they've had on my life, and I see what I learned from them now being passed on to the managers that I have helped develop and the other team members on my team in the way they practice law. And so to have a part in someone's journey and to see them thrive is super rewarding. Earlier for me, it was closing the $1 billion deal was the goal that I had. And it's amazing that now that I've move further along in my leadership journey. Now, more of the pride I have is from seeing my team members really succeed and seeing the businesses just blow past all of their expectations.
Oh, beautiful. That's very beautiful. Yeah, when you're able to participate in somebody else's success, you feel successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wisdom you get with time, and unfortunately, with time, and you spend a lot of time before you get the wisdom. But that's beautiful. You spoke about mentors and role models. Tell us, how can lawyers have mentors and role models to show them the path?
Yeah, so sometimes it's your manager, and then that's very easy because they know your day to day work. They can guide you in what you need to do next. But sometimes you don't click with your manager, or sometimes you have goals that are outside of your current job. So that's where, I think it's at multiple levels. So you look at people who are ahead of you, perhaps they're senior attorneys on your own team or on other teams, and you start meeting with them, asking them about their job, getting advice on issues that you are dealing with. And then sometimes it's your own peers, making sure that you stay connected with even people that you went to law school. I have a group of there's 6 of us from law school that every year for the past 20 years we still get together. We have our own chat group and we can ask each other advice on how we deal with things that are coming up for us. And they're all in different industries, so you get a diverse perspective. And then going to your clients, and they can be great mentors for you as well, giving you insights on how businesses are run, what they really think about, what they look for from lawyers. And then if you're in-house, developing a relationship with the outside counsel you work with too, and the partners there, they have a great breadth that they see across, and so they can also help you see what's going on in the broader legal sphere or in different industries. But again, it all goes back to intention. So making sure you're carving out that time to make those authentic connections with people, and be mindful of the time that you're taking from others. Make sure that you have things to ask, and that you're using their time wisely. Always follow up with thank yous and gratitude, and then find places where you can also perhaps help them. Did you see an article that you know is impacting an area that they're working on? Shoot that over to them. It always feels nice for senior people when they see a more junior attorney like taking initiative and being thoughtful in their interactions.
That's very powerful, Supreet. Thank you so much. Uh, does Google also give you executive coaches to guide you and coach you in your overall development?
Yes, if you are a certain level, then you have coaching that's available to you through work. Also, we have some educational credits that every employee gets per year that you can use if you're using an outside coach. So I have tried both and had a good experience, but I decided to go with a private coach who I just resonated with better. I felt like they understood um, more about my background and the areas that I really wanted to focus on. But I think coaching is so important. Some people only think about using coaching when they have a problem that they want to address, but I found that proactive coaching to just help you get on a good path for your career trajectory is it it's immeasurable, the amount of uh, insights that you'll get. But it has to be the right coach. You have to feel them out, and it might not be the first coach you go with is the right one for you.
What questions do you ask your coach?
I ask them about their own professional background. I ask them about the different industries that their clients are in, or the different positions that their other
So
clients.
your coach has to be a lawyer. They can be a non-lawyer as well.
No, my coach is not a lawyer.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
but had some knowledge in the legal space. And
Hmm.
then I asked them about what framework they use. There's a lot of different certifications that coaches will go through. And so I asked them what framework they use. For me, given how my career was progressing, uh, it moved quite quickly in the span of about a year and a half. I went from having 25 team members to about 110. And to make that pivot in 6 months, I knew I had to really build out the right infrastructure, which honestly is not something that lawyers tend to be great at, to look at the systems and to set the foundation. So I went with a lawyer who had a great operations background because she was able to help me not only just think of the legal issues, but really think of the organizational issues that I had to tackle.
Hmm. In your career so far, Supreet, what has been the toughest challenge for you, and how it changed you as a person and a lawyer?
Yeah, so I think that pivot to the really large team in a short time was the largest challenge I've had to face professionally. I had to learn about different areas of the business, different areas of the law. I had to bring in 3 or 4 former peers who then were going to be reporting to me, some being layered a couple levels below me. And while while also continuing to focus on the existing team. So I had to bring about 5 teams together, and it's not like we got a break to figure things out. Business still had to run, and it had to run seamlessly. So what I learned about myself was, I think that's where my operations background from my undergrad came in helpful, because I was able to set even simple things like how I wanted my one-on-ones to go so that I could tailor my reports to think about what information was super important to share with me. I had to be really curious. I had to focus, but I had to keep being rigorous and focus on execution. And then I really had to treat everyone with respect. I had to take some time out to make sure that I was hearing from all of the new teams. What were their concerns? What were their clients' concerns? What was the biggest fear they had in coming together with this big team? And for my new direct reports, what was their focus? What did they want to focus on themselves, not only with their team or with their clients? And I think by being transparent, by taking time, by being curious without being judgmental, that built up this level of trust that actually allowed us to hit just really execute on the reorg really well, better than a lot of people thought. We had no complaints from the clients. Legal management actually were surprised at how quickly we came together, and now we're benefiting from the enhanced collaboration that we have in bandwidth management. And it's also made it a lot of fun, but it was really tricky in the beginning to deal with personality issues and just the broad scope of work, and then building trust with new clients who didn't know me that well. So it made me, I think, a more empathetic lawyer.
How do you handle conflict with so many stakeholders? Why you are dealing with so many of them? How do you handle conflict?
Yeah, so we have a mantra on our team that I've actually taken from Brene Brown, which is clear is kind. And So being transparent where you can, sometimes as a leader, there's certain things you can't say, but where you can be transparent, that's what's important. So when we do have conflicts that come up, I bring people into the process. I ask them to talk about what issues they are having or why they want to go a certain direction. I try to make sure that we are keeping um, fe- feelings out of it. Like I give people a chance to vent if they're feeling frustrated because you need to let that out. But when we're getting into the solutioning mode, try to keep it as neutral and fact based as possible. And then always with, like, if we can get an aligned goal, that makes things better. And then the path to get there might diverge, but if we're aligned on the common goal, that helps us get to the selected path. So I have the different parties talk about what their concerns are with the other path, what they want to achieve themselves. And then if they can get consensus, great, but you can only let those discussions go on for so long because we have a job to do. And that's my job as a senior leader, to come in and break the ties or to set the direction. And my job is not to make everybody happy. My job is to be respectful and make the best decision for the business and for my people. So that's where the clear is kind comes in. After I've heard everyone out, when I come up with what I think the best path is, I tell them what the path is. I tell them that I've heard them. I tell them my rationale for why. And then we also revisit. It's not that once you make a decision, it's set in stone. You also have to have that humility to review maybe 6 months down the line and see, is it working well, or do we actually need to pivot more? And so I think having that humility also builds up the trust and respect.
Hmm. That's clear is kind is very powerful. Sometimes, sometimes we're not able to convey what you want to convey. We cannot be as clearly saying some things. We got to be a little diplomatic. We got to see how that person is feeling. So, how do you modify clear is kind in those situations where you cannot be extremely direct?
Yes, I write and rewrite emails all the time, and that's where AI can help you too. Make this a little gentler. So I do. Again, I start out with exactly what I want to say. I normally have a list of my clear reasons for why I need to address something in a certain way, and I try to again not make it personal, which sometimes is hard because people can feel defensive. When you don't go the direction they want, or sometimes there's feedback you have to give them because they're not doing the best job. So again, I try to make it neutral. I really focus on the impact, and then I try to find what is the driver for them. So for example, if it's someone on the team who is not being collaborative and is kind of shutting down discussions, I will look for specific examples. I will talk to them about it in a respectful way, not in a large group. And then I will say, in this situation, this is what happened, and this is what the impact was, and this is how the impact is going to impact your future trajectory or your ability to work well with other teams. So bringing that connection of how it should help them. Of course, sometimes there's situations where you're in a broad group. It's luckily been rare for me where someone has made comments that are really offensive to others, and that's where I will, in the moment, stop the meeting and say, "Let's take a break," and or that type of comment is not helpful, and let's keep it professional. Because as a leader, you do need to make sure that respect is followed throughout the entire team, and sometimes that's within your team, sometimes it's with your clients too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. You also mentioned about uh, yeah, in the team dynamics, you got to play a very important role of being a coach and a mentor yourself as well, and how important that is for a lawyer as they are growing in their career path, being a coach and mentor themselves.
It is really important. Even if you're not a manager, it's important. If you're a senior individual contributor, one thing that you are often measured against is how much of a force multiplier are you? How much are you able to influence those around you? And influencing people around you translates very well into mentorship and coaching too, because you will bring up people on your own team. You will even coach sometimes your internal clients of how to get to the resolution that they're looking for. And then it just makes it more fun place to work. If you are taking the time to coach others and mentor others, they know you have their back. They'll be more open with you. They'll be more willing to step in for you when you need coverage. And we spend most of our waking hours with these people. So when it's a positive team dynamic, that just makes the stress level go down considerably. And that's why, again, I think it's really important that if you have a team member that is not following the norms of respect or teamwork and collaboration, addressing that early on is super important because sometimes it just takes one person to throw off the entire energy of the team.
And in that case, have you fired people? Have you let go them?
I have not that many, which hopefully speaks well to our hiring process. Uh, but yeah, and it's difficult, and that's actually a place where my coach really helped me because it's a you have a job to do, but it's a human being, and this is their livelihood that you are directly impacting. So again, I go back to facts and keeping it as neutral as possible and having solid rationale into why I'm making the decision about someone's employment. And then going back to clear is kind, being clear about the reasons that we're having to terminate their employment. And then, you know, even if it wasn't a great situation of why you had to terminate them, sometimes there's still positives. So always expressing gratitude where it's appropriate and thanking the people for their contributions, even if they're not going to stay with you. I mean, Silicon Valley is really tiny. You don't know who you're going to run into again. So, making sure that when you are terminating a relationship with someone, I mean, as a human being, it's important to do it respectfully, but also for your career, it's important because I can't tell you how many people I reconnect with throughout my career, whether it's from college or law school or different jobs.
Hmm. Okay. Tell us about how do you want to be remembered when we leave this world? Like, what legacy you want to leave when we leave this world?
I would like to be remembered as a lawyer who was bold and took chances and really helped to change the trajectory of a business and change the trajectory of lawyers' lives. I think that would be the greatest honor to my career if people were to look back and think, oh, she really helped me get on the right path for bigger jobs, bigger positions, bigger business successes. That would be very meaningful to me.
Hmm. Tell us an incident where you acted like a bold lawyer.
So I had a person on a peer team who I just knew was going to be fantastic for this role that I had coming up on my team. It was going to unlock major new business that would change the revenue perspective for my client at the time. That person had been in a different role for a long time and perhaps wasn't viewed as the top talent on that team. But I knew that I could see the potential. We had to go through a lot of internal workings, and I had to request a lot of information and prior work from that person. And it just started to get really tiresome for them. And so we took a break. And then actually, there was a major world event that happened at that time that I thought was quite bold with respect to an election. And so in that moment, I thought, oh, well, this is my time. Let us be bold. And so I called them. I asked them to take a chance on me, and that I was confident that if they joined me, the work would be interesting. They would thrive, and the business would thrive. And luckily, they came over, spent the next 5 years with me, and everything we thought and more happened. Unlocked business in ways that we didn't think would be possible, had a renewed invigoration with their day to day job, and then passed on that energy to their other team members, and given their experience in other parts of the business, really helped train them up and help their team members to be more holistic lawyers. So that was a really proud moment for me. I had to go up against my leadership to really fight for, advocate for them, but I'm really glad that I did.
Hmm. This is beautiful. This is very powerful. Be bold and take chances. And have you made mistakes in your career?
Yes. Many.
What mistakes can we learn from?
Oh, some of them were little, right? Like you're in the throes of drafting agreements, and it's the 12th hour you've spent on it. So there's typos, some of which could be very meaningful. I remember one time switching the um, what each party would indemnify for in a way that didn't make any sense. And luckily, I caught it right before we signed, but the other party had already signed. So I had to go back and explain why it'd be helpful for all of us to change it. Um, sometimes it's been with personnel or with the opposing counsel. Sometimes you can be so heated in the moment and your frustrations come out and you're not as professional as you want to be. So taking the time where you can, going back and clearing the air with the person, and then doing things to change yourself. So I literally have post-its everywhere around me that say, be kind, be neutral, to help me that when I'm in these contentious situations, I always keep respect front and central. But when I was a more junior attorney, sometimes my emotions got the better of me, and it wasn't good for me professionally, and it wasn't good for the business, because what I do is to help partnerships come alive. And if you're too contentious, they're not gonna you're not setting off the marriage on the right foot.
Mm, mm. Beautiful, beautiful. This has been very great discussion, Supreet. Thank you so much for your time today. I think you have been extremely generous with your time and your wisdom. I think you shared all of it with us, and people who listen to this conversation can really use these nuggets of your wisdom to grow fast in their career. Really thank you for your time today and for your wisdom today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been really enjoyable. I hope it's helpful.
Absolutely, thank you very much.